Hey everybody, Scoutcraft here again. It's midweek Wednesday. Got to do a little bit of shopping, but we got a couple things to talk about today. It was a hot one, but look at that sky, still blue and puffy clouds. Telling you this has been a great year for weather-wise. Nice little breeze kicking up. It's going to be a nice night. Let's get started. Okay, first off, let's talk about last week's question. A lot of you did get it right. That knot that we tied last week. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is a regular coil of rope. I have a ton of different ropes and styles, and I'm big into knots. We talk about a knot and a hitch. Let's talk about that. A knot is like this when it's tied just like this. A hitch is when it's tied to something, like if it's tied to a pole or pipe or something, that's a hitch. So that's the difference between those. But as you get better with knots, as you get older and you learn better knots, the one thing you want is a knot. It's anybody could tie a knot that'll hold. You just there's an old expression that says forget a knot, tie a lot. So in other words, you just keep tying knots and it's going to hold, but the problem is getting those knots out. That's where the hitches come into play, and that's where, you know, the real good knot work comes in, because now you could take the knot out as easy as you put it in, whereas an amateur, you know, it's harder to get those knots out. So let's talk about the bowline. Now, this beautiful knot here can be pronounced so many different ways. Bowline, bowline, bowline. It's all the same knot, so no matter how you pronounce it, it's the same knot. Now, last week you saw me talk about the bowline, or just to mention it and show it, and a lot of you knew what it was. And let me show you how we learned to tie it, or how I used to teach this in the Scouts, because this knot is easily forgotten how to make. And so I used to make it so that you can't forget. And the first thing I used to say is, you got to look at your knuckles and grab the rope. So there's only one way you could grab the rope and look at your knuckles, and that's this way. With your thumb down, you grab the rope and you twist it forward. Now that gives you your loop, okay? Now, when you have your loop like this, you just turn the loop like this so it's flat, and you have this little vertical part there. Okay, now this we refer to in Scouts so that you can remember it. This is the hole, like a rabbit hole more or less, and this is the tree. So here is, you take your tail end, and what happens is, this is the rabbit. We call this little guy the rabbit. The rabbit comes up out of the hole. He sees you, gets scared, runs around the tree, goes back down the hole. And then you pull it like this, and that is your bowline. See? That's how you make a bowline. Very simple to do. Again, so you don't have to rewind. Knuckles facing you, thumb down, grab the rope, twist it forward. This is the hole, the tree. There's the rabbit, this little guy. He comes out of the hole, gets startled, sees you, runs around the tree, back in the hole, and then you pull just like this to tighten it up and snug it up, and there is your bowline. Now, what we were talking about before, the difference between a bowline and the other one, see, this is what's called the tail of the rope, and you can see the tail is on the inside of the loop, compared to the other way, that if you went around the tree the other way and came into the hole again, then the tail would be on the outside. Now, this is called a cowboy loop, or a cowboy bowline, or a Dutch bowline, or a, you know, some people call it a left hand. There's a bunch of different names for it. But the difference is the tail. And I was taught this by an old tugboat guy. He told me, because I showed him he said, can you tie a bowline? I tied it. He says, let me show you a better one. And he showed me this. And I said, does it? He goes, the holding is the same. He says, but the reason is because now you have a loop that has nothing inside to interfere. When you have it the other way, that tail in there, you know, can push it and like that and mess with the knot more or less. So there's a lot of arguments. The Dutch Army uses this. That's why they call it a Dutch bowline, because they say that the tail outside makes for a stronger knot. And I do like it, because this is supposed to be a rescue knot. And if your body is in this, you know, cavity here, you don't want this poking you in there. So I do like this, and that's why it's called a Dutch bowline or a cowboy knot. But very interesting. Some of the attributes of this knot is that when you pull it like this, the more you pull, the more it tightens up, and it doesn't close the loop. So that's why it makes for a good rescue knot or something like this. You could tie this one-handed. There's a lot of people like this knot. However, like I said, it's hard to, a lot of times you don't remember it. It's hard to remember. In a situation where there's an emergency, a lot of times you won't be able to, you know, you want something simple. And that's why I used to go through with the Scouts my favorite knot. Now, I know some crazy knots and some interesting knots, but You know, my favorite saying is the KISS saying, K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid. And that is, my favorite knot, believe it or not, is the simple overhand knot. And the reason is because you don't forget this knot. So what I used to do is I tried to make it for the scouts that they could do everything they had to do with just this one knot. And let me show you how versatile this one simple, underrated knot is, the overhand knot. Let me show you all the things you can do. Now, on almost all my hanks of rope upstate that are hanging around, you'll always see a loop on one end, and that's because you know, a lot of things you could do with a loop. So to make a loop, remember with that overhand knot, all we do is we double the rope like this, okay? We double the rope, and we tie that overhand knot that I was just talking about, and you know, that's it. This is called an overhand loop. And how beautiful and simple is this? And it's a super strong knot. The only thing bad about this knot is it's hard. It can cinch up and lock, you know, getting hard to get this knot out. However, in a rescue situation, we don't care about if you can get the knot out. What we care about is that it won't slip when you're lifting somebody up a cliff or something. Now you have this beautiful loop at the end of a knot that's very secure, and it won't close in on itself. And let me show you all the things you could do with just that thing with this loop. If I wanted to raise up a tool or anything I want to raise up to somebody, or they wanted to lift it up a cliff or something, you do what's called a lark's head or a cow hitch. And all you do is you put your fingers in here, twist it around like this, and you see what we just did here? And now you could place your hammer or whatever tool in here, snug it up, and you could raise this up just like that. And then when they get it up on top, it's very easy to take it off and send the rope back down. So that's called a lark's head or a cow hitch. And what you do is, like I said, all you do is you flip it around like that, and look at all the things you could do with that just from this one knot and having that loop. Thing we use a lot of carabiners, and if you want to, again, with the same loop at the end, you know, and instead of trying to make a knot that you're afraid is going to slip, especially if you're pulling somebody up in a life or death situation, this isn't going to slip. It's just going to get so tight that it's hard to get out. But what you do is from here, you slip this into your carabiner like this, slip it around, pull it taut, and now look at this. Look at this beautiful little system that you have that you can rely on, that you don't have to, again, like I said, this is going to be hard to get out because it's going to cinch up, but at least it's got good holding power, and it's simple to remember. That's the key, simplicity. Next up, we had to learn the square knot. That's one you learn a lot. And a square knot is nothing but an overhand knot done twice like this, you see? And to see, and it comes, you can tell when you have a good square knot when it does this, okay? When it does that, that's your square knot. If you do it reversed like this, it'll be what's called a granny knot. And see that? Now it doesn't have that same action, and this knot will slip a lot easier than the other one. But so a square knot is just two, but I'm going to show you a better knot with just using the overhand. I'll show you now to connect two pieces of rope is called a fisherman's knot. And what you do is our favorite knot, the overhand knot, you just tie it in here like this. Okay, so you got an overhand knot in there. You pass the other piece of rope through here like this, and then you tie another overhand knot just like this, simple. Okay, so now you got an overhand knot here, an overhand knot there. Watch what happens when you pull them together. See that? They will tighten up and snug up on each other. Very strong knot for tying two ropes together. Here's the beauty of this. When you're ready to untie them, you take the two tails, you pull them apart, and you could see that they untie very easily. Just from two of the most simple knot, the overhand knot. This is ingenious. One last thing about, like I said, the overhand loop, why it's such a beautiful knot. When you tie this overhand knot in a double line like this, gives you the overhand loop. That's very strong. Now, if you wanted to make a sling or something like that, you could pass this rope through here, and look what you have now. You have almost like a lasso, but this will tighten up on something. So if you had to pull something like a log or something, you put it around the edge of the log, it'll tighten up on there. And again, all from this one single knot. Last up, we have the magical slip knot that has been entertaining kids for years. You pull on this and it disappears. That's always fun. One other thing that the overhand knot is very good for, that if you're afraid, like for example with this, we're going to make a a Cowboy Bowline here. If you're afraid that this is going to slip for some reason or another, you can always tie what's called a stopper knot. So here we have our Cowboy Bowline here. Now you have this tail here. You can always put a overhand knot in the end of here. So this will assure that if it does start to slip, that it will lock up in here and lock it in. So a lot of times you'll see a knot tied at the end here, that if you're afraid that for some reason that the rope is maybe not of a high quality rope or something, you want to make sure they always put what they call a stopper knot sometimes, and that'll jam in there so that it definitely can't slip. This was a leaning tree I had to cut down a couple of years ago, but believe it or not, I just cut off a piece here that we're going to bring home, but it's still moist, still wet on the inside after 2 years. So when you want wood for firewood, you have to split it and stack it. But the reason that this birch holds it so much is because this bark I was telling you about has a lot of oils in it, and it really keeps it watertight. So let's bring it home and see. Next up, I brought these home from upstate. I just cut them off. Actually, I dropped this tree a couple years ago. It was a real leaner, dangerous tree. I had to, take it down, but it's been a couple years. It's still wet, believe it or not, because of, like I said, this bark is so good at maintaining, the wood inside. But what we're going to do is we're going to debark it. Now, they have something called a bark spud. It's a special tool that it's almost like a spoon that lets you get into the bark, but I don't have one here. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to cut a straight line down, and we're going to peel the bark off. Now, to score the bark, I'm using a footprint hack knife, and to get under the bark, I'm using an old chisel. It's a 1-inch chisel, but it works very good for debarking a lot of these smaller limbs. Okay, now you see how easily that peels off here. This birch is known to peel off there real easy, and it is good. But let me show you something why they don't allow wood to be transported between one state and another. Now, this was dropped 2 years ago, minimum 2 years ago, right? So it's been dead for 2 years. And it's been sitting up there upstate, and you could see where I cut it and brought it home. I had it outside for about 4 or 5 days, sitting outside, just drying, whatever. But I want to show you something here. Can you see here? Can you see these insects here? These, that's, I guess, larvae or whatever it's called. But I don't know what kind of insect that is. But this could be some kind of danger. There's all kinds of insects already in here. That could be extremely dangerous. Now, if you bring this from one state to another, like New York to Connecticut, and that could be a boring beetle or something, you don't know. Here's more. You see over here? Smaller ones. You see them all? This is why you don't, you don't store your firewood in your house or anything. You don't know what you have here. Very dangerous to transport wood from one to. You would never notice it. If I showed you this, you would think it was just a dead piece of wood. But underneath that bark is where you have all the problems. So all these insects and everything in here, could be detrimental to another state. So you never transport wood from state to state. I'll put these out in the sun here and let these dry out even more. But you can see how long it takes for wood to dry out. Years. My hedges here now are about over 12, maybe 13 feet tall. But look at that beautiful sky, huh? Low humidity, even though it's 90-something degrees. It's just a beautiful day. Last up, there's actually some good things coming from this COVID. I got pizza the other day, and look at this. They put tamper-resistant seals on the boxes now. I actually like this a lot. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you have a great day. Take care now. Bye-bye.